Welcome to the Flora Sage Podcast, a place where we help you create a life you're excited about. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so freaking excited for this week's podcast episode. Oh my gosh, you guys don't even know. Oh, okay, so a couple weeks ago, I interviewed my dear friend, Shawnah Marie. And we had such an overwhelming positive feedback from that episode that I thought we would bring her back on and have another conversation. Welcome, Shawnah.
Thank you so much for bringing me back. I'm so excited to get this going, and I'm looking forward to what just manifests and what we start talking about.
Woo, right?
Yes.
Okay. So lately on the podcast, we've been talking, well, actually forever on the podcast, we've been talking about creating 1-degree shifts in our life and what that looks like and what it actually means. And lately I've been talking about how when we make a 1-degree shift, what we're doing is we're actually bringing ourselves back into alignment. And last week's episode, I talked about how, like, when our car is out of alignment, what happens is it pulls to the right or it pulls to the left and it messes up our tires. And over time, it can kind of mess up kind of a lot of things. And so that's what happens in our life is when things are out of alignment for a long time, we get wonky, like things feel off and just kind of shit goes sideways, for lack of a better term, And so I know that in my life, since I've moved around and all that jazz, it's been easier for me to make adjustments simply because I don't have a ton of people around me that think they know me and that think, well, this is Flora, this is how she is. Like, Flora's a runner, or Flora is someone that hates running. And we get these labels of things that we like to do and don't like to do and things that we do just naturally. And like when I was little, I was called a spaz. I'm very high energy. I'm very animated. Yes, but I hate that label. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. I mean, I kind of embrace it now, but whatever. But it's like people just getting to know me now, they know that I'm animated, but they don't know that label. They don't know that I'm from a really large family. They don't know all these things about me. So it's easier for me to make these little adjustments and to shift in my life because I don't have all these people around me that say, well, why are you doing that? You always do this. You never do that, and make it harder for me to change. You know what I mean? So because I've moved, it's been so much easier for me to make these tiny little 1-degree shift adjustments and to come into alignment into who I am now. But share with us, what it's like, because you haven't moved around and relocated a bunch in your life. You've pretty much kind of been in the same general area. So let's talk about that. Let's have a full conversation about that, because I think a lot of people struggle with this, both being, where they've always been, but then also for somebody like myself who's kind of a nomad that, we like to travel and do all this other stuff and don't settle in the places where people know us for long periods of time.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So, when you said labels, it was probably 6 years ago or 6.5 years ago, I ran into a lady that was doing a nonprofit and making t-shirts. And the thing around it was all about only you should label yourself. So what do you label yourself with? Is there a word? Is there this? And I thought, wow, that's interesting. So I actually had her make a t-shirt for myself. And then, we're not supposed to label anybody else, but I actually labeled my middle son and I made him a t-shirt that said strong. Oh. And then I labeled mine and it said fighter.
Oh,
and it was, yeah, right. And it was a black t-shirt, which I'm, this, but I'm all about living life in color. So it's not very often that I wear black, but that was her whole thing. You wore a black shirt with white lettering. So people would ask you what that meant, right? What does that mean? So when I would wear it, it was super interesting because like you said, I haven't went very far from home, from the village we grew up in, right? I think, I lived maybe 30 minutes is probably the farthest I've gone, right? So I wore that shirt one day and I was in town and they're like, oh yeah, a fighter, like a boxer. Yeah, you're kind of scrappy. You're brutally honest. You tell people like it is. And, yeah, I've heard that about you. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, fighter. are you kidding me? And yeah, and they kind of do like the little boxing gloves, like they're, fighting. And I'm like, yeah, you got this wrong. Fighter to me means no matter what life has handed you, like life is going to knock you down, life is going to do stuff, but how do you shift it? Like you say, how do you shift when life throws that punch and you fall down? How do you shift and fight your way back up? Fight your way back to your greatness, fight your way back to your plus points. People can say, oh my God, she's just full of herself. Or I remember my second mortgage job and process mortgage loans. And I came to Stillwater to work. And the guy that was interviewing me, he's like, yeah, your cousin told me you're kind of been fed by a golden spoon. So you really don't have a work ethic. And I was like, oh, okay, but we're talking and we're doing an interview. So it was super interesting. I mean, that's probably why I got along with him so well and worked with him for so many years. But I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. I was like, well, at the end of the day, I went to my dad's school of hard knocks. Like, your performance was your paycheck and you did your job. Like, you worked. When you were at work, you worked. So years later, I mean, it was a couple of years later, he said, I'm glad I never listened to her, because you are a hard worker. You make sure your work's done. And I just appreciate the give and take. I mean, you're going to be here and you're going to work and get your files done. But if there's nothing to do, you're like, hey, I don't want to sit around. Can I take a few hours off because everything's done and then I'll come back? So it's the perception of people, like you say, but I feel like I'm constantly up against that at times, because when life knocks you down again, you're trying to raise back up from that and really reinvent yourself. So it'd be interesting to get that tank top out today and wear it and see what somebody might say to me about it.
Oh my gosh. Yes. There's so much to unpack here. I just can't even stand it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, and that's the thing. So I concur, like well, and I think myself too, we're kind of scrappy. Like, if somebody gets in our face and it is like, it's not justified. Like, if I'm being a bitch and somebody calls me on it, I'm being a bitch. And this is why.
Right.
I'm not a Karen. Sometimes I feel like it though, but it's like, but it's like, I'm very much, if something is unjust and it's just like, no, but yeah, I could totally see that about you, about being scrappy. And it's like, well, and you kind of want to be, I mean, like, we're petite people and it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, sometimes you got to be like, look, just because I'm small doesn't mean I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, right. I think, and I even say for people that just meet me, I'm like, gosh, if you don't want the honest answer, the brutal honest answer, do not ask me the question. Because even before I open my mouth to answer and you genuinely wanted to know it, you're going to read it on my face. And that's not what I mean. It's not because I'm rude. I'm just honest. Yeah. I realized in all of this ebb and flow in life, and as I've gotten older, like, you just have to be honest with people. I'm not a bitch, but if I recognize what you're doing as bad behavior, or I don't understand it, I'm going to ask you and kind of call it out. And it's not even rude. It's just like, gosh, this is what happened. Did you mean it that way? What is that? And why? And I'm okay. I mean, I do a networking meeting for my massage business, and I'm the president of the meeting right now. I run it. And I'll tell you what, it's in my head when I go in and I'm like, oh, I labeled myself, I'm just a massage therapist. How can I really run this meeting when there's an attorney, a real estate agent, there's there's this person and that she runs a construction company, and I'm just a massage therapist, and I work by myself. I bring in other therapists to do couples massages, but I really work for myself, right? By myself. And then I'm like, no. So I stood up and I was like, listen, I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And, I might not run the meeting the way you want me to. I have a lot of energy. I'm animated. I bring the positivity and I try to lift it up. At times, do I probably bring the utmost professionalism like an attorney's office? Absolutely not. That's just not me. So I'm like, you guys, brutal, honest feedback. I will be there to listen. And I will tell you, it was really interesting to actually have to sit in it when they gave I'm like, not during the meeting, before on the telephone. I don't want it into text. I don't want it in an email. Let's face to face or on the telephone, whatever you can handle. And I got that feedback and I thought, okay, I get it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But don't appreciate it and don't appreciate it. I mean, I love you, but
Yeah. Well, and feedback, it's like, we are brutally honest people. And I don't know if that's just because of who our parents were. Like my mom was like hella brutally honest. Like people either loved her or they hated her. Yeah. And your parents were the same way too. And they kind of had to be. I mean, our parents both owned businesses in a very small village. And they were very outspoken. They were very much the pillars of the community, some of the pillars, because there was a lot of pillars, but it's like they knew how to get shit done. And it's like we learned that from them. And people sometimes don't know how to handle that brutal honesty, or they think I love this one. They think that you're feeding them a line of shit and that you're lying. It's like, oh, no. I don't have time for that crap, But okay, so getting back to one of the other things that you said was the golden spoon. And that was something, like I said, and I mentioned this in our last episode that we did together, is that your family, you guys had several establishments, plus you had this huge float park. So you guys had like a large majority of business in our village, and people came from all over to go to Float Right and the concerts, and it's still a huge venue today. And so it's like you guys were the rich family in town, and oh yes, they get handed everything, yada, yada. And again, I saw, as your friend, I saw how hard you guys worked, and I saw that you were not anything like what people said. And I was like, have you ever had a conversation with her ever? Like ever? Because it's like, yeah. And those assumptions can make it really challenging if you're trying to pivot and trying to shift into a new way of being, or trying to make a name for yourself outside of the family name,
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that.
It's a very interesting thing because I think, I grew up, like I said, your performance was your paycheck. You were, it was all customer service. I mean, I don't think there was any aspect of those businesses that weren't customer service. Well, I was at the park and I was, at the tube stand and selling tubes for the day, or I was checking somebody in to go camping, or I was answering the telephone, or I was at the bar. You were on and you were smiling and you were helping somebody. So I just, you have to really value like what you're bringing to the table for people. And I think I've realized that more like in today's world than I really even did when I was growing up. There were times that I was like, okay, well, if they're going to think I'm scrappy and I'm kind of a bitch or whatever, I'm just going to be like that to them. I'm just not. When I went to work, though, that was a different story. I mean, I never quite understood my dad's theory on that. I have short hair. I have really short hair for a reason. First, I have 3 boys and they don't wait around for mom to get ready. Right. They want to go when they want to go. But the other reason is, my did not believe you couldn't come. I don't care if I was selling tubes to people that had been drinking all weekend, partying, camping, they're having some cocktails. Do they really after 2 beers care what your hair looks like? No, but my dad did. I couldn't put a ponytail on. You couldn't wear a hat. You had to fix your hair, look presentable. You couldn't come in wrinkled clothes, so I think as far as like the it's such a unique concept, but you had to go and show up and put a smile on and really care about your customers. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's why I do what I do today. And I do massage because I wanted something that no matter what you did when you were done, your client appreciated you. So, right. And they didn't judge you. Cause if somebody would have came back like for the second or third time camping, if you've seen my mom in the office, you realized I was the owner's daughter. I mean, my dad, absolutely not, because we don't look alike, but my mom, they know. And then they treat you differently because, and I'm thinking, well, there's no difference in the person I was last year to this year. Still the same person pushing a tube to give you or checking in to go camp. But it's super interesting to watch people's perceptions change and realize that everybody grows. Like you say, with your 1 degree shift, everything you happens in life, you learn a little bit, you grow a little bit. A good, great person with a big heart can do something that isn't the best one day, or have something, that they do, and they can come back with it and reinvent themselves. But it's super hard when you live in a small area.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Well, there was something that I heard you say about, like, with your dad saying, you have to do your hair, you have to have, makeup on or whatever, no wrinkle clothes, you got to be presentable, and you got to, put in that hard day's work. And again, your performance is your paycheck. And my parents were very much the same way. It's like keeping up appearances, you always look nice, be friendly, be kind, listen to what the client or customer wants. And if it's reasonable, then yes, give it to them. But if it's not reasonable and unethical, like, put a stop to that immediately. And so with us kind of being scrappy, is you kind of have to have that place or that mindset of standing your ground. Otherwise, people could walk all over you. And I think that served us really, really well. However, when people do see us in that space of authority, and us being petite, we're like 5'5", 5'4",
Oh, you're being kind. I'm only 5'2".
Oh, I'm 5'4". Yeah. So yes, I mean, like, us little spitfires, but it's like, also when you put in that hard day's work and you earn that paycheck, you're like, yes, you get a sense of pride. You get a sense of pride, like, fuck yeah, I did this. You know what I mean? But then also people could see that, and this is kind of linking back to our family names. They see that as arrogance. It's like, no, I'm proud at what I've done. Like, I've earned what I have, but they think that it's just given to you. And you're like, no.
I read, and I don't know how many years ago this book came out, but I don't know if you've read anything by Grant Cardone.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. So Uncle GC, I think the first book I read by him was Be Obsessed or Be Average.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's it. I'm confident. I'm not arrogant. I'm not conceited. I'm confident in who I am. And people take that because they might not have boundaries and they might not have that confidence in themselves. So they take it into you. And it's pretty interesting. As I say that, I think about the first business networking group I ever went into was back in, I think it was in the late 2014. I walked in and there was an insurance agent and a dentist that at the time I did digital advertising sales. I don't know if you did know I did that, but jack of many trades. I've done a lot of jobs, but I did advertising sales. So I walked into this meeting because my boss wanted me to go, and I was like, okay, fine. And I can talk to people, but boy, I have to talk and have, like, business professionals, again, the attorneys, the dentists, the doctor, whatever, staring at you. But I went in and I'm like, these two guys walked in with such confidence. And I will admit, the insurance agent I thought was a little arrogant at first. And then I realized he just has the confidence. He knows what he's talking about. So when he walks in with that posture, right? Mm-hmm. Joined the group because that's what my boss wanted. He was my mentor. For like 6 months to help me. And he's like, finally, I don't know if it was the second or third time we sat down, but he was helping me with the presentation. And he said, why did you choose me? Why did you ask it was me or the dentist? I'm like, because I realized you guys walk in with this posture and this confidence, like, I'm here to add value to you guys, and listen to what I'm saying because you're going to learn something. And I was like, I want to figure out how to do that. And I did. It's that you're sure of yourself and you go in there with the confidence and know that you know what you're talking about, right? And once you can do that. And then, you know, there's so many people that have helped me with that. What other people's opinion is of you is none of your business. And you walk in and you show up. If they can't handle that, that's about you. As long as you know, and you sit in your stuff and you know you're coming from a good place as you're sharing something you understand and you know, that's confidence, and we all need that. But I get a lot that think, yes, that take it the wrong way.
Yeah. So, oh gosh, yeah. Well, so explain how that confidence has helped you make those little 1 degree shivets. 1 degree pivots. A shivet. It's a pivot and a shift. I love it. So explain with, you know, like to us how that confidence has helped you while you make your 1 degree shifts / pivots, and how that's also helped you align into kind of the new version of yourself, because I've known you forever. And I've known that I've seen different iterations of you over the years. And some people would call that reinventing themselves. But so share with us, since people do have these labels and they think that they know you because of who you are, your name, blah, blah, blah. Share with us how your confidence has helped you in reinventing yourself and coming into alignment through these little 1 degree shifts. Wow, and kind of like at the public eye.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think a lot of it is, you know, if I really got down to it, the confidence in building myself is, you know, the tribe that I surround myself. You always talk about the tribe, you know, whether it's you, and listening to a podcast, reading a book from somebody else and hearing their story. I think that's where my confidence builds. You know, I remember, gosh, it had to be a long time ago, maybe when you first moved back from Oklahoma. I don't think I ever realized you just like picked up your boys and moved to South Africa, right? to pivot and shift. And I heard that and I thought, oh, like if she can do that, why can't I do this? So I think a lot of my confidence is watching other people, as crazy as that sounds, and realizing, seeing what they came from and what they made themselves into. Like when people talk about the overnight success, I think you talk about it, Ed Millett in his book, Grant Cardone. I mean, Annie, my friend Annie Meehan, listening to Rachel Hollis's book. I mean, some of those really make a difference for me. And then, you know, there's ones that I go back to and re-listen to that chapter on that time where I lose that confidence. So I think it's remembering, you know, like, you can be bummed for a moment, my dear friend Carl O'Brien, bummed for a moment, not for a month, Shawnah. So I think it's just having those things, those tools to remind you of where you were and where you are today. So you can, and you remember then that one degree shift or that pivot you made, and who you surround yourself is such a big deal. I mean, at the end of the day, when you surround yourself by that one negative Nelly, or if you've ever read The Energy Bus, I'll talk about that one. Have you read that by John Gordon?
I started to listen to it years ago and I never finished it.
So I listened to it. Don't ever listen to it. Listen to it after an energy session when you're on a road trip with 2 other people. Not a good idea, right? Oh, lots of stuff comes up. I mean, that's the time you should be sitting in your own stuff, not bringing other people's energy in the car. But anyway, I take it to that, we're all driving. His analogy is, we're all driving our own bus. So as we're talking right now, I'm on your bus, but you're on my bus, but I'm still in control of my bus. You're in control of your bus, but we're trying to be each other's passengers too, and have a conversation and collaborate, right? To help other people. You don't know who's going to listen to that, really needs to hear something, just even a nugget of what we ramble on about, right? Mm-hmm. That's such great knowledge and information. But, you don't let one negative energy sucking vampire remember, find that tip. I think I said last time how I have the sticker, my screensaver says, they whispered, or they said you can't withstand the storm. and it's a warrior princess, and she writes back, I am the storm.
Nice.
Right? No matter what comes at you, right? That's going to pass, and you're going to learn something, and you're going to have the confidence and build yourself again for it. But it's finding that tool that reminds you of that. You know, and I'm going to talk about self-care on Thursday at a group, and it is, I think the confidence comes from the things I do to take care of myself. And again, there's so many people that I can thank for teaching me, like, do you have a faith? You know, what do you believe in? Whether it's God, angels, the universe, a spirit, you know, find something and invest in something that's bigger than you, and find that friend that lights you up, that believes in you, until you have the confidence in yourself. So really, really watching who those people are and what's your trigger, you know. And when you're reinventing yourself, let me tell you, those triggers, in a small area, you know, so there's times, you know, I just had somebody say, you know, I love your post, how you start your day matters. I'm like, yeah, well, here's a tip. Sometimes it's because I need to reread that myself.
Yes. Oh my gosh. You know, I love what you said about, you know, essentially looking at someone, seeing something that they do that you're like, wow, I want that. Yes. And you seek out ways, opportunities, pathways for you to be able to embody that yourself. I love that. And that's just the thing too, is that that's part of the reinventing process. That's part of the 1 degree shift process, and aligning yourself into who you want to be. And, you know, one of the things that I talk about with alignment is how we get rid of and declutter the unnecessary. And sometimes the unnecessary is a toxic relationship or a friendship or a toxic way to think. Yeah. Or knowing that if I go onto social media first thing in the morning, that's going to make me jump into all of this comparisonitis, and I'm comparing my life to everybody else's, and oh my gosh. And I mean, social media is the highlight reel. It is not the down and dirty, you know, bad hair day, you know, if you got gas or, you know, you got smelly breath, you got shit all over your house. It's like, no, I mean, that is not, it's not the behind the scenes. That's the high. Even when people show behind the scenes, it's still the highlight reel, you know, quote unquote.
Somebody I met with yesterday said, you know, her life is all sunshines and unicorn and rainbows. And I'm like, I said, you know what? I remember it was shortly after the Girl Wash Your Face book came out. And I can't remember how many years ago it was, but I had somebody said, you know, are you that positive and happy all the time? You can't be. I mean, come on, you know, I know some of this stuff you've went through. I mean, like, how do you do this? And then I had somebody actually say to me one day, just recently, say to me, you know, you just look for the drama and I'm like, what? And I just thought, and I sat in that, I didn't say anything. And I sat in that and I said, do you realize, and you might call it, I don't know what you'll call it, but I said, you know, I think because I had so much to heal from way back years ago of like being okay with myself, I have went into relationships, whether it be a significant other relationship or a relationship with friends, I went in because they have something that they're hurting so bad from. And I feel like if I can help them or I can fix them, it's going to fix the hole that was in me. And I realized, you know, with your help one day, I realized that like, no, that wasn't mine to fix, but that experience fixed what I was trying to fix from back in 2010 or I think it was 2010. I mean, a recent experience healed what I couldn't heal. And I beat myself up for it day in and day out as a mom. And I finally was able to heal that. So it's so somebody said that to me, like, it's always sunshine and unicorns and rainbows. I was like, no. So I put something on about that hard moment in life. So I will share the real and the raw at times. You know, people are on social media and they're scrolling because they need to know how you start your day. Do you have a wellness routine? Is there, you know, your tips and stuff, you know, people for that, but you also do need to be real and raw. And I realized that. I was like, no, there's days like, but I gotta, there's days, there's a reason I go to the gym in the morning at 4:30 in the morning, go to Hot Work. Somebody said, what do you do that for? And I'm like, my brain health and my overall well-being. This is what works for me. Acupuncture, massage, a float tank, you need those things. And yes, we can get in the comparison. Oh, their life's always sunshine, unicorns, and rainbows. Well, no, if you want to really sit down and ask me what life is like sometimes, I'll be honest, and I've, we're doing an event January 7th, Live Life, Give Life, There's Hope, raising the awareness in the battle of sex trafficking in our area, emotional justice and the domestic violence piece, and the feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. It's a tough topic, but it's something that, how do you teach people and how do you help people? But, if you share a little bit of your journey, then you're going to help the next person that doesn't know how to ask for help.
Exactly. Well, and, I think everybody can relate that's listening to this of shit that they've gone through. And I always say that shit is fertilizer for what's to come. And it's like, we've both been through. Yeah. But it's like, for those of you who are listening, who don't know, Shawnah had a brain tumor in first grade. And that was, she like legit almost died. And for a good number of years, she was known in the neighboring communities of the girl that had the brain tumor, and then she survived. And, that was a huge event in Shawnah's life. Does that define her? Absolutely not. Is it part of her story? Yes. My mom passed away when I was 12. There was all kinds of things that people said during that time, because my mom, people either loved her or they hated her, and it's like, oh my gosh. And, everybody who's listening to this has gone through these moments where you break and you are literally brought to your knees, and you can either numb out or you can heal. And how you heal is by completely just falling the rest of the way apart. I always talk about this, and well, not always, but several times I've talked about the chrysalis and how the caterpillar is eating and doing its thing. And then all of a sudden it realizes, if I truly want to transform, I need to get rid of everything that looks familiar and that's known to me and start fresh. So it goes into its chrysalis and completely liquefies. It completely falls apart to only rebuild itself as a butterfly. And the beautiful thing about the birthing of a butterfly is that it starts to pop open, like the chrysalis pops open, and the butterfly has to squeeze itself out. Well, the reason why that it looks like it's struggling, it's not really struggling. It is kind of, but it's not. It's squeezing the liquid out of its wings so that it can dry them off when it comes out, and then it flies away. And there's a story of this farmer and his wife. And okay, so there's this giant vineyard, and they were like walking around, and then all of a sudden one day the farmer's like, oh look, a chrysalis, and the wife is like, fabulous, this is so exciting. She became obsessed with this thing. Every day she'd go out and look and look and look. Well, one day it popped open. She's like, oh, I'm so excited, I'm gonna help it along. So she takes the chrysalis and peels it away. Then the newly birthed butterfly falls to the ground. It was struggling to open up its wings, and it ended up dying. Oh my gosh, she was beside herself. She went to the farmer. She's like, oh my God, it died. I don't know what happened, blah, blah, blah. Then he explained to her that part of the journey of the butterfly is it has to struggle to come out of it, because it's wringing that excess liquid and fluid from its wings. No, you can't see the droplets of water or fluid, falling. It actually stays inside of the chrysalis, but that's part of the journey. And the thing is that all the people outside of us see that struggle. They see the divorce. They see the brain tumor. They see somebody dying. They see addiction. They see whatever it is, suicide. They see all the things, all the bullshit, all the struggle, all the heartache. But what they don't see is that transformation inside, that those things were the catalyst of. And then they see rainbows and unicorns and hearts and flowers, and they see you smiling because you're like, by God, I freaking overcame that shit. You'd be smiling too, you know?
So it's super interesting. This is where the conversation went. So I don't know. I don't think I've ever shared this with you. So you'll just about be flabbergasted. So when I assumed the business Stillwater's Healing from a girl we went to high school with, the logo at that time was a lotus flower. So the petals were the hands, and then the inside of the lotus flower was like shaped like a silhouette of a person. And when I got it, I didn't know much about lotus flowers. So I'm like, yeah, no, I want a butterfly. Stillwater's Healing. I want a butterfly. So the girl, I was like talking, and I said, I want it so that the butterfly looks like it's water droplets. So if you look at my logo, it's like a water droplet and a butterfly. And she's like, what is the butterfly? And I'm like, well, it's all about transformation and how you grow and you flourish. Because just when the butterfly thinks its life is over, it becomes this magnificent creature that flies free and just transforms. And like, when you see that butterfly, you can't help but just be like, wow, look at that. And if you know the story of where it comes from and what it comes to, like the transformation. And I talk about that, like when you come in, we're working on you for a massage to see how we can transform your day, whether it's 20 minutes or it's a 2-hour massage. How can we transform your day and refresh your mind, body, and soul so that you're walking out as that beautiful, magnificent butterfly? But so interesting you're telling that story. But I found you, I don't know if you know much about the lotus flower, but that one's pretty cool. So a lotus flower lives in murky, muddy waters. So every night it comes underneath the water and goes back into the mud. And then it arises in the morning to the daylight, and it cleans itself off as it emerges into this beautiful flower. So I'm like, all right, I haven't done new business cards with my new phone number because I want a lotus flower with my butterfly now. Because I'm like, you know what? Here's the thing. Yeah. You take all that, for lack of a better word, all that shit you've went through in all these years, relationships, friendships, the things you hold on to because you don't think you parented the right way, or you weren't a perfect daughter that day, or you might have sucked as an aunt that day, or whatever it might have been, right? But you can, at night, I think about that in the lotus flower, at night, you actually go to sleep. So you're going underneath that water and you're resting and you're, everything. So you can emerge as that beautiful person, and you have a new day, a new story, a blank page to go ahead and flourish and transform and just make a difference and thrive, super interesting. And, for those of you, that are listening and you're just like, oh, I have an energy sucking vampire on my bus. Be all right to you grow, they fall off. Be okay to set some boundaries and maybe not talk to them 5 days a week. Maybe you just say, hey, we can talk on Monday morning and Friday afternoon. And we're going to talk for 15 minutes because I got to preserve my time because life is full. That way you're not being mean. You're not doing whatever. And, if that's you and you're that person and you're listening and all of a sudden one of your friends say, hey, we're going to talk at these, well, maybe then maybe then pick up the book, The Energy Bus, pick up the 1 Degree Shift, read some of these stories. You can transform your life. You can come back from anything you want to. It's all about perseverance.
Absolutely. Well, and I love that you're just like, no, we're setting boundaries here. And, one of the things that I talk about in the 1 Degree Shift book is figuring out where you are, where you want to go, and what your priorities are. And, one of the things I don't talk about in the book, but I talk about everywhere else, is what phase of life are you in? And sometimes you're in the phase of, I am in the phase of no bullshit. Like, I don't want any energy vampires. I don't want anybody that's not authentic. I don't want anybody that's on the complaining bus. It's like, no, I am in a phase of my life where I am building my business, or I'm an empty nester, or I'm this or that or whatever. But you have those secondary phases. but those priorities are key because your priorities have been learning about mental health stuff, thriving, building your business, building a strong community, building that confidence, and living that message. So when somebody sees you and they have no idea who you are, they're like, oh my God, I love her. I love how no nonsense she is. I love how no matter what life throws at her, no matter how many times she gets knocked down, she comes right back up and is like, I'm going to overcome this shit because I know I have built my toolbox of tools out of the books that I've read, the people that I, commune with every day, and my community. And it's like, I love that. I love that. I love that. So I also love that how you mentioned that, no, there are some people that I am going to limit and that I'm not going to let in my space. So I know that we've got a few minutes left. So share with us what it's been like for you to put those boundaries in place and with the people that you've kind of grown up with and you've kind of known for a long time, and share with us when you put those boundaries in place, a time, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, a time where someone maybe resisted, but then came back to you and thanked you for that, if that's happened.
I don't think so far I've had anybody come back and thank me for it. What's been really interesting because of as I've grown and transformed and just different things that have happened, I haven't had that yet.
Okay.
But what I will say is what's really interesting when I'm like, you're constantly calling me. You just can't do that, and I know I've done that. I'm guilty of it too. But for the case of what you're saying, I'm just like, okay, here's the deal. Like, I do massage. If I do not answer the phone the first time you call me, chances are I'm with a client. I can't just say, hey, hold on, let me take my hands off you, break the and pick up the phone because so-and-so's calling me, right? So, for one of them, it was my son. So I just said, okay. And I mean, justified, valid point. I mean, there was a time, and I've done it too to him, and he's done it to me. Hopefully he's okay. So if he listens to this sometimes, but I would say, like, I've done it too. Well, okay, yeah, my massage is over at 2, but people got to get ready. They come out, they check out, they drink their bottle of water. You can't rush them out the door because your kid's calling you, So I got to the point that I was like, okay, I am done. By the time I clean up my room and my last client's gone, it's 2:30. But then clients are late, and I mean, I don't want to cut their massage short. And if I have the time, I'm not going to cut their massage short. Right. So for that, I had to put the location on my phone. So he knew if my location was by my studio, I was in a massage. But I didn't need to say, you know what? I get it. I get you want to talk to me. I get you have all these things to say to me when you get done with school. Right. I get it. But here's the thing. You're going from school to hockey. Something might have happened. You want to talk to your mom, but I can't. So leave me a voicemail. Get out whatever you say, and then we'll talk later, or we'll talk tonight. It's really saying that. And I think it was, I should say it was probably difficult for him at first because he was so used to me answering whenever he called. Right. But I haven't with anybody else. I've noticed more in a small community that as I've grown and I've tried to set the boundaries, most people just kind of fall off your bus. Not me, not an explosion or anything or a fight. They call you less and you talk less. And kind of just decide, like, you set the boundary and say, gosh, thanks for sharing, but I just can't today. Where I'm at, that's going to be hard for me. I'm not having the, I can't do that today with you. And then they fall away because you're growing and they can't more growth. So instead they kind of, I don't know, lack of a better word, maybe resent you.
Right. Yeah.
And then they fall away.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, so that was a reason why I asked you that question, because a lot of the times I've never been thanked for putting up a boundary. Well, my kids have actually thanked me for being their mom, which I'm like, hell yeah, I did good. But
Right.
I brought that up for a reason, because a lot of people sometimes kind of crave that outside validation of, I put up a boundary, damn it, this is hard for me. And, would somebody just pat me on the back? Because sometimes it's hard putting up boundaries, because we do have people, sometimes very important people in our life, fall away because that connection is unhealthy, whether it's me causing it or them causing it. Together, it's just a toxic environment. So we're not good or bad or indifferent, whatever. It's just not a healthy environment. So cutting them off and saying, no, this is not in alignment with who I am now, where I'm going. This doesn't feel good. So we put up that boundary. People aren't going to thank us. And I brought that. The reason why that I asked you that question was because I wanted to get your take on it too. People are not going to thank us for putting up that boundary, but you thank yourself, because now you have that space of saying, now I feel healthy. Now this feels in alignment.
Well, and after that up, it was very interesting. It made me think of something else that recently, within the last year, I went through. I started changing and I started putting up boundaries. Like, I'm not gonna allow this person to come to the home I'm living in and treat me like this or talk to me like this. So I started putting up boundaries. So I get, well, you've changed. Well, I don't know what's wrong with you. What's going on? You've changed. You're a different person. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to accept somebody coming into a space where I've just made coffee and I've just made lunches and I've just done this and I've done that and I'm taking care of things and they're watching me and they're going to call me a bitch and I haven't done anything to deserve it because it's funny. And I'm like, well, they were joking. I'm like, no, that's just disrespectful and rude. Like, I'm being kind and coming from a place of like, how can I help? What can I do to make everybody else's day start the right way? Like, and then I just put up the boundaries. Like, I'm not making, I'll make your lunch, but I'm not making the extra lunch. And well, what's wrong with you? You've changed. Well, no, it's not me. It's just that I finally see my worth again. And I'm not going to be treated like that. I mean, I get it. There's couples out there that they have nicknames or they do this or that. But coming from a background with domestic violence, I'm sorry, you don't have to call somebody a name, and it's not funny to do it. It's not funny to call them with names that are negative and very hurtful. And I get it. People joke around. But if you honestly look at somebody and say, listen, I'm a warrior of domestic violence, and I do not want to be called a bitch. Now, if I'm actually being one, you can say acting like one, but to say you are is a totally different thing. So we can have that. But the minute I put up the boundaries, then it was like, oh boy, it was all about me changing because I was putting up boundaries with them. And then it opened up a whole new can of worms.
Yep.
So nobody's going to thank you. You have to thank yourself. And it can take you months to realize, like, I think I've just high-fived and thanked myself in the last 2 months several times. Like, wow, I learned some valuable lessons from a chapter. And you know what? Like, woohoo! I changed, I grew, I put up some boundaries. They weren't appreciated. That doesn't mean that, anybody's a bad person. It just means that I see my worth for what it is. And I decide what I am and I am not going to invite in my life.
Exactly.
So, and right. And I think like yesterday I was talking about, when you grow up in chaos or you get out of a chaotic situation, you don't even sometimes realize you get pulled into somebody else's, for lack of better words, like the coffee mug you gave me, not my monkey, not my circus. So when you get pulled back into those monkeys and circuses, you don't realize that because that might trigger you to something that you have to heal inside of you. So you don't even realize you're in the hamster wheel spinning.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Well, and the thing is, one of the things that I heard you say was about like your value. And it's like, just because you cut somebody out of your life doesn't mean that they're less valuable and you're less valuable or they're less relevant or what. It's just, It's just that you are in two different places and you have and want two different things. And it's like, it's not good, bad, or indifferent. It just is not cohesive for you to stay in that person's energy any longer.
With it, be okay, be honest, be okay, and just be like, you know what, our energy or our lives don't line up anymore.
Yeah.
I wish, and be okay with that, because sometimes we do outgrow. We outgrow people, we outgrow clothes, we outgrow decor. There's so many things that people outgrow in life, and it's okay to do that. But always, you know, be respectful and let somebody know if you've outgrown them.
Yeah. So
and then decide.
Oh, exactly. This reminds me of a Dane Cook skit from years and years and years and years ago. He goes, why is it when two adults are dating and they realize that they don't like each other anymore, why can't they just say, yeah, this really isn't working out for me. Yeah, it's not working out for me. All right, okay, bye. And then leave. Why does it have to be a drama? He's like, oh no, we have to like do this. He said, she said, and what, you know, and like go all ninja on each other. And he goes, we have to have that drama. And I'm like, no, we don't. So it's like, we can be adults and just say, yeah, this is like, I'm good. Like, this isn't really working anymore. But our ego takes a hit. Our ego's like, fuck, what did I do wrong? Yada. And we start to attach all this extra meaning where we're just in two different places. That's it.
Well, right. The hard part, like the two of us get that because we're spitfires. We just stay brutally honest. And there were times that I couldn't do that, but I'm just to the age now that I'm like, you know what, if it's not working, just be honest with somebody. Don't be dishonest. Don't be deceitful. Or any of that other stuff. Just be honest and say, hey, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Let's be cordial. We'll part ways, be kind to each other and thoughtful, and you have a great life and you have a great life. There's no reason to muddy the waters or be awful, you know. And as you said that with two people dating, you know, I think I'm going to bring this up briefly, you know, because my youngest son, we share him every other week. So every other Monday, I have him 1 week and then his dad gets him the other week. Mm-hmm. And I asked my other son, I said, you know, what schedule works good? And he said, you know, Mom, every other week. But you know what would be ideal in a perfect world? But you parents can't think of us. And I went, huh? And I thought, this is going to be a good lesson. He goes, you know, if you just half the month at one house, half the month at the other house. And I thought, because in 1 week you finally get settled and you're moving again. Yeah. Like the kids for that. And then as I was talking with a friend about this, they said, but you know, kids need their mom. And I said, yeah, they need their dad too. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I'd love to think all my boys would die without me, right? Mm-hmm. But in all reality is, like Grant Cardone says, your kids want an hour of your time every day. An hour. 60 minutes of your undivided attention. I don't care if it's in 15-minute chunks, it's 1 hour at a time. But after that, they're sick of you. Mm-hmm. They want attention. Get down on their level. Get interested in whatever they're doing. I don't care. I have boys. I've went hunting. I've played hockey. I played paintball and got, you know, that's a whole nother story. You know, like I've sat in deer stands. I've watched every Vin Diesel, you know, The Rock, all the hardcore shoot 'em up, gory superhero movies, you know, all that. That's not my ideal of a movie some days, but you know, I mean, I see the movie Bad Boys on TV. I think of my two older boys, and then I start to think about the fun sitting watching the movies, right? I mean, for Christ's sakes, I remember one Christmas, my oldest son, I'm like, pick out a movie. He picks out Death Race. I mean, who watches Death Race? But I'm like, whatever, you know. But I mean, so, you know, like, think of that. Like, you know, and yeah, I don't know. But think of your kids. Think of that. Because we get so wrapped up as adults in, like, you know, the drama and the BS about it. And I know I haven't been perfect as a co-parent, but now I'm like, oh my God, okay, you know what? It's Halloween. Whoever has Halloween gets Halloween. And I seen him at the Halloween parade, and I just happened to be passing out candy with my friend, and he walked up and I got to see him out trick-or-treating. Was if I didn't get to? No, but it would make his life easier that he's not going back and forth and up and down because I need to be dramatic about it and an ego. Yeah, no, it doesn't serve anybody a purpose.
Exactly.
I would love to see that Dane Cook skit.
Oh because my God. I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes. So if anybody's listening,
you'll have, because I'm just like, God, I wish people would just play that. And the hard, until you go through a situation, you don't get it.
Yeah.
You don't get it.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So we're a little bit over time. Next time I have you on, I want us to talk about triggers and our ego. Oh,
that could be one heck of a topic. Oh my God.
I know. Wait, that might have to be a 2-part one.
Yeah.
Okay. So any last words of advice for those who are listening, who are trying to reinvent themselves in a place where everybody thinks that they know everything about you? Any last words of advice?
I would say my last parting thing to say to you would be, think of that word. Think of that word that somebody said that has been so triggering or labeled you at, and you've been labeled it for years, right? It's come on and come off and you've heard it. So I teach mental health first aid classes. I think I talked about that before. So we've really talked about, think of that, I used to get, oh, so you think you're super mom, huh? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm smart. I'm unique. I'm persistent. I show emotions. I'm resilient. I'm thinking magical. I see opportunities and I create moments. So think about how you can take that word, right? If somebody said, oh, she's just crazy. Well, you're creative. You're a realist. You're authentic, right? And you're yearning for life.
Oh,
so
I love it.
Create that story in your head when you hear that word. How can you recreate it? And maybe it's too hard to hear that word. So pick up the other word. What is that great thing in you? What is that great thing that if somebody said, I want to hear about your plus points? We did this, and I'll say it very quickly, a hockey, gosh, was it 9th grade, 10th grade, whatever. I'm like, okay, well, your coach said, you're going to a team, like 2 other kids. We're going to Chicago. It's a team made up of all these kids from different areas. And when you get there, the coach said, your homework is an elevator pitch when you get in the locker room. My kid, what is that? I'm like, you walk in and you say, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah. He'll probably get mad at me, but anyways, that's okay. He'll thank me later. But I said, you walk in, you say, hi, I'm Bodie Smith. I played this year for the Iowa Wild. I'm, mainly a center, but if you need a good defenseman, I can go back and be defense. If you want a wing, I can do that. But I'll tell you right now, if you put me on the third line with the kids that haven't scored a goal, I know the game and I'll help them get the goal because I'm opportunities that bring the next great moment, or however I said it. And he goes, Mom, that's bragging. I go, no, that's talking about your greatness and your plus points. You know the game of hockey. Are you perfect and the best player ever? No, but you understand the game of hockey. And you just came off of 2 weekends ago. You helped 2 kids that had 1 or 2 kids that hadn't scored all year. You helped them get a goal.
Nice.
It was about your teammates. So that's not talking about or bragging or being arrogant. So think of that. Think of what it is that you think you're really good at and use that. So when somebody says something negative to you or they label you from years ago, you can go, gosh, I think I'm amazing. I've flourished and I've grown. And I really see myself as that beautiful butterfly. But thanks for sharing.
Nice.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yay.
Later, you go back and listen. I hope you still love Mom. I mean, it was a valuable lesson. And I think that's great to use the authentic in the story, right? The story.
Absolutely. I love that. Yay. Yeah. Cause it's like, when even myself, when I am pivoting in my life and like when I became an empty nester or when I became an author for the first time and pivoting into that new version of myself, and the people around me sometimes didn't accept that. Sometimes I got hate for it. Sometimes I got, emails or messages of, who do you think you are? You're just goody two shoes and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I've worked hard to get where I'm at. And that level of pride sometimes could be taken as arrogance. But yeah, and it's just like, I love that he said that, but isn't that bragging? No, I know that when I was growing up, is you don't brag, you don't tell people your accomplishments, yada, yada, whatever. Let them read about it in the paper. My mom used to say, I'm like, oh, Jesus. But it's like, that was one of her markers of success, is how often she could get in the paper.
Oh, that's funny.
And she bought the building that the paper was housed in. Go figure. Anyway, but yeah, I love that, tooting our own horn. You've worked hard to get where you're at. And if other people want to poo-poo it, let them poo-poo it. But owning that value is huge, huge.
Right. And be okay with that. Think of those things so that when that word comes in or that moment happens, you can go ahead and change that and change that story.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much for being with us today, Shawnah.
Yes, thank you for inviting me back. I'm super excited. Yeah, it was fun.
Nice. I love it. So those of you who are listening, if you have any questions for Shawnah, if you have any feedback, any topics you would like to hear us riff on, knowing that her and I have been friends literally for our entire lives, go ahead and send an email to support@florasage.com. Let us know what you'd like for us to chit chat about. Next time, we're going to talk about triggers and the ego and whatever that comes up, like any that whole spider web of topics that will ensue from that. But in any case, thank you so very much for listening to us, for being here today for the podcast. I love you all. And please, please, please share a review, whatever platform that you're listening on. Share a review, not only about this episode, but about all the other episodes that you've listened to here on the podcast. I love you all. I will see you back here very, very soon, and have a fabulous, fabulous rest of your day. Mwah! Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. All links mentioned are in today's show notes.